Welcome to East Tennessee Pinball. Got this Mata Hari at home sitting in my driveway. Got it propped up. Sitting on the two slingshot coils in the back, and I just got a piece of wood up here in the front. I just kind of prop it up so I can sand all the way to the edges. You don't really need to sand. Really, the only thing you have to sand is make sure the inserts are good and clean. But I've got these sticky sections where we pulled up the Mylar, and there's just a lot of damage. I want to get that top layer of dirt and debris. Nothing's going to stick. Ultimately we're adhering that hard top to this, and there's just lots of detritus. Easiest, I'm going to sand it anyway. I might as well just sand it all off. So I'm going to sand the whole thing. I need to sand the inserts up to 400. So I've got my little sander here, a variety of sandpapers. Do have a respirator here, or not a respirator, but filter. Just you don't know these things. This was late 70s. Probably doesn't have lead-based paint, but it might. Just be safe. Not fun to breathe all the dust anyway. So I don't know, maybe 180 start. You can always go back. So maybe I'll start with a 240, and if that's not enough, I'll get a little more aggressive. Then I'll work up to 400 on the inserts. But I'm going to start with, I'm going to really kind of save the inserts to last, because they're really not that much to do to them, really. Those definitely have to get the artwork off of them. And so there's only 3 that have any artwork. The rest of them just really need to be cleaned up. So I may just hit these with the 400. So I'm going to start with a 180 or 240 and just sand, just clean up the playfield, and we'll see where we're at. Well, I made a little progress. I stepped all the way down to a 60 pretty quickly. That 180 wasn't really touching it. One thing I didn't mention, in a game like this, basically the ball trail comes up here and bounces around. So you're going to see this line between the artwork and the bare wood. So then you basically, the new one will lay right where this one is, ideally. But it might be just a millimeter one way or the other, So the safe bet is to go ahead and basically sand back a 1/4 inch. So if the registers are not just quite right, you're safe. And the other thing is, like that, I'm going to try to get that. I don't know how deep that stain goes. You can't go sand too deep or you'll have a divot. But I'm going to sand that pretty well, and basically this whole section is going to be bare, so it's going to need to be shellacked or clear coated really well in some way or form. And basically this whole area up here, you're not going to really see it because you're going to have, and you got the metal skirt, so you can kind of see under the skirt, but not much. But this right here needs to look pretty. And obviously the ball trough does also. So a look to a certain extent down here that you might see some of that. So I'd go ahead I don't have the overlay with me right here, but I'm just going to sand this back a 1/4 inch just in case it's off a little bit. You've got a wooden rail that goes up right here. Same thing. It just takes a second to ensure to sand that back just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Back at it now. So that was about the better part of an hour of sanding. There was actually quite more margins than I realized that I wanted to sand off. So there's a margin here because that overlay is going to come right up to the edge, and then it won't cover this hole. So the artwork needs to be clear of that again, because it might not fit exactly perfect. Same with these, and I went ahead and sanded around these also. But really what took the most time was getting this dang adhesive from the Mylar off of there. I think I'd have been better off to try to get, I would have been better off to get as much of that off with a razor blade before I even started sanding. And speaking of which, I gouged it over here once. You see the razor blade dug in. Things like that don't matter at all because that overlay is thick enough. I looked it up. It's 32nd of an inch, so it's almost a millimeter. But it'll bridge that, no problem. If you do something like that, you don't want to try to like sand it out, because you don't want to like a soft depression, because that will be a low spot. But it'll bridge pretty big things. They claim it'll bridge even slightly sunken inserts. I'm sure it would the small ones. The big ones, maybe not quite so well. These inserts are really pretty decent. None of them are popping up. Anyway, I'm gonna spray this thing off and see what I'm gonna pause this till the compressor finishes. So you can see I didn't really mess with the inserts at all yet, because I was using the 60 grit, which is way more than I needed for these inserts, and I didn't want to really scratch them with the 60 grit. So I'll probably start, I don't know, something like, well, the 400 is what I need to get up to. I'll probably start with one just below that, 320, and if that's not enough, then I can always get more coarse. I might start with the 400. There's really not that much to do. Just make sure that it takes off the artwork pretty easily, and probably do the whole thing, because I've got, well, it's not, you know, as long as it's got some bite, or it doesn't have a bunch of, as long as it's clean so that it will adhere. So this whole thing's gonna have to be tacked and cleaned. I'll probably use some naphtha to clean off all the residue, and then tack cloth it. And a lot of these inserts, so that one I should have gotten around, well, I'll have to get around all the inserts, and then basically I'll paint black around the inserts, unless it's, yeah, these all have a black line around them. So when I'm done sanding, and right before put down the overlay, put a black line around all these inserts again, so it's off a little bit. All you see is the black underneath of you just painted underneath it, so you don't see anything messed up. So anyway, back to sanding. So I'm done sanding now, I believe, and I sprayed it all down, got rid of most of the dust, paid special attention, try to blow all the dust out of the sockets. So you can see they're all sanded. I went up to 400 grit. You see some of them, they look a little bit, you know, like there's some white modeling. I think it's both basically white dust that's down in the cracks. I think some naphtha, take that out, clean it up, and then those cracks will fill in when I do the overcoat with clear. So this process took about 2 hours. It probably at least a half an hour of that was getting rid of the mylar, which was really a pain. Consumed about half or 2/3 of the sandpaper I went through, because it just would fill it up, and if you didn't replace the sandpaper, it would start spreading it elsewhere. So it was a real messy deal. Anyway, so I'm gonna take this back to the shop. Next time you see it, I'm gonna clean it up with some naphtha and maybe some alcohol, get it good and clean, and then we'll be touching up some paint around all the inserts, and depending on the art on any of these perimeters. If it's a black perimeter, we'll paint it black. If it's wood perimeter, we'll leave it wooden, and we'll go from there. Adios.